Good evening, fellow Toastmasters. You're probably wondering, who is Frank Giorno, and what's he doing in Timmins? I often ask myself the same question. Tonight I'm pleased to deliver my icebreaker speech that will give you, and also myself, some insight into who I am and what I'm doing here in Timmins after spending my previous 55 years elsewhere. I listened to a couple of icebreaker speeches last fall, and after a long hiatus of attending Toastmaster meetings, it's my turn to break the ice. An icebreaker can mean two things. It can mean a large hulking ship with massive razor-sharp hulls that barrel through ice fields and breaks massive Arctic and Antarctic ice. It can also mean an event or speech that breaks the barrier of anonymity and brings people closer together. I can assure you my speech tonight will be of the kinder variety. I won't be plowing through Arctic ice on my way through the Northwest Passage to China in delivering this speech. Although in telling you about myself and what I'm doing in Timmins, snow and ice do play a role. I arrived in Timmins 9 months ago to work for the Mushkegowuk Environmental Research Center, or MERC, as we affectionately call it, and also the Five Nations Energy Incorporated. The program deals with energy conservation for 3 First Nation communities along the James Bay coast: Ottawapiskat, Kasashawan, and Fort Albany. Five Nations Energy is a wholly owned and operated First Nation transmission line company that since 2000 has been transmitting electricity from the Otter Rapid generating station between Cochrane and Moosonee to the 3 communities along James Bay. That's a total of 270 kilometers. The line runs through, as I said, Ottawapiskat, Kasashawan, Fort Albany, and also to the De Beers Victor Diamond Mine. Previously, these First Nations relied on diesel-fueled generators that were unreliable and also were not very safe for the environment. So when I took on my assignment, my Toronto friends thought I was crazy. Moving to Timmins to accept this assignment? You must be crazy. First, the First Nations had more pressing needs. They had other issues to worry than to conserve energy. Another claim they made was that it was too bleeping cold in Timmins, and it was even colder along the James Bay coast. But I was ready to move on to a greater challenge, a newer challenge. After 20 years of working as a civil servant, or snivel servant, as we affectionately call ourselves, I thought it was time to get into something more meaningful. Something that would make a difference to the lives of people in the 3 First Nation communities along James Bay. Moving to Timmins and working for MERC was also an opportunity to return to my roots, working on environmental issues. As a youth, I worked one summer with Pollution Probe, which was one of the first major environmental groups in Canada. I later worked as a student journalist at Ryerson, and along with my partner Jane Glasgow, we investigated a story for the Globe and Mail in 1980 into the building of Ontario housing on a former radioactive waste dump in the Malvern community, which is part of Scarborough. That was back in 1975. That took 20 years for the government to clean up. My career as a journalist took me to Brandon, Manitoba, where I covered the shenanigans at City Hall, like the bear falling into a septic tank and having to be extricated from it. It's a story that I really enjoyed working on. So I eventually crossed over to the dark side and took on an assignment with the Ontario Waste Management Corporation, which was to build a toxic waste facility that no one wanted. That was amazing. Eventually, I did work with the Ministry of the Environment, but that lasted 12 years. And in 2000, I was eventually part of the Mike Harris Cuts And after being the senior communications advisor on water quality issues, I ironically left the ministry the week that Walkerton was happening. So when I arrived at Timmins 9 months ago, I faced several challenges. Some of the challenges have to do with me transitioning to a smaller northern community. The other part was, how did I relate to the First Nation community and the people I worked with? I must admit that at the beginning, it didn't really look too good. And I was kind of wondering, what was I doing here? And I was all set to go back. But as time passed on, I realized, you know, Timmins is not a bad place. 30 below actually feels quite comfortable once you're used to it. And it started to feel very comfortable around the end of February and the early part of March. And second of all, I noticed that there were quite a few interesting restaurants that I enjoy going to, like the Golden Dragon, where I saw Mr. Frank Kerr one day, and also the Daj Tandoori, and there was a certain amount of diversity. And then there was also the Dante Club. If I ever wanted some good Italian home-cooked meals, that's the place to go. So what did I learn? I learned to say goodbye, because my speech is done.